And a very happy Monday to you at 12:07 in the West. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's in the state of Texas.
John, add this to the growing list of Karen Bass sounding terrible when she doesn't answer questions.
Thank you very much.
The National Weather Service forecast at City Hall?
Thank you very much.
Do you? That's an important question because you said you didn't see it.
She's starting to sound like the fake doctor. When in doubt, just start thanking people.
And don't answer very simple questions like, do you get reports from the National Weather Service in your office like everybody else does?
Well, that doesn't fit with the narrative. It's the fire chief's fault.
Of course it is. That's why she fired her on a moment's notice on Friday, possibly so people wouldn't deal with having to watch Karen Bass's whole interview with Alex Michelson on Friday where she sounded like a buffoon.
No, thank you.
Well, and it's not just that she fired the fire chief, but the fire chief responded to the mayor and also apparently has a clause in her contract where she doesn't necessarily have to go away. She can be demoted and stay with the LA Fire Department.
That's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, no kidding. Imagine those two running into one another at the Christmas party.
Well, John, let's start off with a little update on what exactly happened Friday with somebody who's been waiting in the wings, ready to cover something explosive. The best field reporter there is out there at Fox 11 News, Mr. Ed Lascaux.
A blast of pepper spray, and it's on like Donkey Kong.
Let's hear what Mr. Lascaux has to say.
Good evening. Welcome to Fox 7 News at 10. I'm Alex Michelson.
And I'm Christine Devine. Mayor Karen Bass fires Kristen Crowley as L.A. fire chief.
Fox 11's Ed Lascaux live in downtown L.A. to explain why. Ed.
Now, I'm just going to tell you right here, because of the nature of the job being a fire chief and the fact that she was fired, I beg all of you, do not play the drinking game where you take a shot every time Lascaux says fire in this report.
Oh, if so, you're going to end up at the Betty Ford Center.
And why, and the fallout that keeps coming this late hour over that bombshell announcement out of City Hall, the Friday firing at the very top of LAFD. Watch.
I just met with Chief Crowley and removed her as fire chief.
The fire chief fired as Mayor.
Right out of the box.
The fire chief fired as Mayor Karen Bass takes action against Chief Kristen Crowley.
You know what? I got to save that. That's going to be good.
The fire chief fired.
Well, the man speaks the truth.
As Mayor Karen Bass takes action against Chief Kristen Crowley, blaming.
How dare you not tell me what everybody else already knew?
If you're Crowley and you were given that as the reason as to why you were fired, do you fire back in that meeting and say, you know, you could have just turned on the television or the radio?
Blaming her for a lack of leadership ahead of the deadly Palisades fire, and the mayor slamming Crowley for not preparing an after-action report on the firestorm itself.
The fire chief refused. We all know that 1,000 firefighters that could have been on duty on the morning the fires broke were instead sent home.
And the fire union says, well, yeah, because they didn't have any fire trucks, because they're all in maintenance, because Karen Bass cut the budget and we don't have any mechanics.
This is actually very important. What the mayor wanted was the fire chief to do a written report that chronicled all of their failures so the mayor could then refer back to that report and say, I'm not at fault. The fire department is at fault by their own admission. Look at this report that they wrote.
If Kristen Crowley was refusing to do this report, it's because she knew this was a cover Karen Bass's ass report and not an actual report as to all the failures. Because if you want to talk about an after-action report, isn't the DWP equally to blame for a whole lot of the issues that happened in the Palisades, including the 1,300 fire hydrants that were not fixed last year?
I think the fire chief made the right call here. If you're going to be blamed either way, you might as well not be blamed based on a report that you wrote to try to help the mayor.
On Chief Crowley's watch.
But now the mayor's action, the Friday firing.
Oh, there's another one.
The Friday firing setting off a political firestorm.
Oh, he can't help himself.
He can get away with it because he's the OG.
The Friday firing setting off a political firestorm.
There's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking, but...
Oh, yeah, Monica Rodriguez is pissed.
You can tell that she's exploring the idea of running for mayor if Caruso doesn't jump in.
You know, what the hell are you doing?
Well, and her dad was a firefighter for many, many, many years in LAFD, so she knows a little more about how that department runs than Karen Bass.
She does not deserve this treatment.
Especially, she says, coming from an embattled mayor who's facing criticism for leaving, traveling to Africa despite weather reports warning of dangerous wind conditions days before she left. The mayor claims she never knew about those warnings.
I can't believe she's sticking to that. At what point do you just acknowledge reality and say, okay, I put that trial balloon out there. No one believed it. Time to move on to the next one.
Whoever she has hired in her crisis response team that says stick to the line of, I didn't know the weather was going to be bad, it's not making her look good.
No, it's not.
But then I don't know exactly what defense she can have for abandoning the city when we knew it was going to be bad.
No, the reality is she knew that we were going to have heavy winds. She knew that we were at great fire risk, but she wanted to go to the party, and she didn't want this to get in the way.
She wanted to be on the world stage, and the day-to-day hell that is being a mayor of a major city wasn't as interesting to her as gallivanting in Ghana. There's some alliteration for you.
What kind of drinking problem do you think she must have where she can't let a fire get in the way of a cocktail party?
The mayor claims she never knew about those warnings. This from The Issue Is on Fox 11 earlier this week.
From the city.
There's some vertical integration.
Oh, corporate's going to love that.
From the city, from the county, that level of preparation really didn't happen. So it didn't reach that level to me to say something terrible could happen. And
Didn't really help her cause that, like, Gavin Newsom, the day that Karen Bass was still in Ghana, is like, we've tried to prepare as best we could for this. We had thousands of fire stations and fire trucks all ready to go. No, Karen Bass says no one knew what they were doing, and no one told me.
Well, how about this? Why didn't the teenager that operates her Twitter feed bother to tell her that she was tweeting out under her own Twitter name that the wind was a-coming?
There is that. Karen Bass's official Twitter account at Mayor of LA tweeted out the National Weather Service report on the weather the day before the fires.
Oops.
to say something terrible could happen and maybe you shouldn't have gone on the trip.
Why didn't
But to me, I don't know. I mean, I think that...
Oh!
Getting a little testy there.
And maybe you shouldn't have gone on the trip.
Why didn't
But to me, I don't know. I mean, I think that that's one of the things we need.
This does not make her sound competent or smart or aware of anything that's going on in her administration.
What employee tells their boss not to go on a trip? You know what kind of employee tells their boss what to do? An unemployed one.
I don't know. I mean, I think that that's one of the things we need to look at.
Is it politics over the safety and truth when it comes to public safety? And I think that's a really big problem. If people make a personal decision to travel somewhere, that's on them.
Yeah, Karen Bass.
Who disagrees with that? Outside of Karen Bass, who's just denying reality.
Well, again, this is why you fire the fire chief. So the story is no longer Karen Bass has no justifiable reason for going to Ghana. It's, I fired the fire chief. There must have been a good reason.
Blame her.
We all were very clear on what the threats were.
The mayor's act.
Okay, so the city council knew that the weather was going to be bad.
Everyone in town knew but the mayor.
The mayor's action against the chief bringing sharp reaction now from the union representing firefighters.
We are outraged at the termination of Fire Chief Crowley.
Now, I don't want to set any stereotypes, but does that sound like a union boss to you?
He's no Cecily Myart Cruz.
We are outraged at the termination of Fire Chief Crowley, period. In our opinion, Chief Crowley is being made a scapegoat, And she's being terminated for telling the truth.
Telling the truth, he says, about the understaffing and the underfunding of LA's fire department.
You know, it's so interesting what happened here, because if you remember, the first week of all of this, Kristen Crowley, after getting pressed over and over again by questions from Fox 11's Gigi Graciette, admitted that the city failed the fire department and the city government failed the city, and there were budget cuts, and they did not help make that fire department whole. And then there was that whole meeting that Karen Bass was going to have with Kristen Crowley, where everyone was reporting the Daily Mail that she was about to be fired. Didn't happen. She was waiting for the blowback to go down, and then she fired her. But she was going to fire her no matter what, because then it's not Karen Bass's fault.
The die was cast. The only question was when.
Telling the truth, he says, about the understaffing and the underfunding of LA's fire department. As for the mayor's claims of sending firefighters home, the union fires back.
You have to. I mean, use Ed Laskos and you get a pass.
The union fires back.
Is because we didn't have enough engines or trucks. You know why? Because they're in our field repair shops, maintenance yard, because we don't have enough mechanics to fix them. Mechanics that were cut by Mayor Bass's budget.
Wait, I thought there were no budget cuts.
Well, and here's another wrinkle to the story. Apparently, the fire chief kept all of the receipts of the correspondence back and forth between her and the mayor over the budget cuts.
Now live, more reaction, more criticism coming in, this time from Rick Caruso, the businessman who ran for mayor but lost to Karen Bass last time around. Caruso out calling the firing very disappointing. Caruso saying it is time for city leaders to take responsibility for their own actions instead of passing the game. For now, we are live here downtown by City Hall. Back to the west side we go.
I don't know how I got to Ghana.
I just woke up one day and I was in Africa. It's like going over to Bill Cosby's house at night. You just wake up one day and you go, why am I on the couch and why are reruns of The Love Boat on? You never know. So
well,
that's what's going on with Mayor Bass. Now, Randy, the fire chief is responding to all of this.
Let's hear an update from over the weekend. Let's go back to Fox 11.
Tonight, Crowley is making her first public comment since being ousted. Fox 11's Chelsea Edwards is live in Brentwood with what Mayor Karen Bass is saying when pressed about the controversy. Chelsea.
Well, Susan, Crowley's response has a slightly defensive tone to it. She says she's proud of her decades of work with the department. Tonight, we spoke to people who were affected by the fires, and I'll tell you what, they had a lot to say about her dismissal. One day after being removed from her position as fire chief at the LA Fire Department, Kristen Crowley is speaking out. As a humble public servant for over the past 30 years, 25 of those with the LAFD, it's been an absolute honor to represent and lead the men and women of one of the greatest fire departments in the world.
When is the tell-all book coming out?
Oh, it's coming.
As the fire chief, I base my actions and decisions on taking care of our firefighters so that they could take care of our communities. LA Mayor Karen Bass says Friday's decision was based on Crowley's handling of the deadly January fires and quickly drew criticism from local leaders and the union representing firefighters. Many of those affected by the Palisades fire agree the response was mismanaged.
The real issue is why weren't the dams full? Now you have 1,000 firefighters not being able to respond. You have how many trucks? Ladder trucks, ambulances, etc., not up to maintenance scratch because of the lost money that went to stupid places.
Others.
By that, he means the homeless.
Stupid places.
I love that analysis of LA City's budget. A lot of money went to stupid places.
He's not wrong.
That went to stupid places.
Oh, I got to save that.
Money that went to stupid places.
That's great.
That guy reads the news. Maybe Karen Bass should have done that before she went to Africa.
Others say the blame shouldn't fall on a singular person.
I think for sure things could have been better. They could have been more prepared and had more reserves ready to go and more resources.
If a fire chief gets fired, how does the head of the DWP that makes $750K not get fired for not fixing the fire hydrants and have no idea about the reservoir or even telling LAFD about it?
The reason the fire chief is being fired is because she went on television and acknowledged that the budget was cut, and that played a role in their response to the fires. After she said that, from Bass's point of view, she had to go.
More resources ready to go.
Some say Crowley's dismissal is outright deflection.
I think she's a scapegoat. You know, I think these things were inherent before Mayor Bass took office and the fire chief. I think they've been handed down for years. I think that everybody's looking for someone to blame for this, you know.
At an event Saturday, Mayor Bass shut down accusations that Crowley is a scapegoat.
I would never scapegoat anyone.
Oh, yeah, and we all believe you because we were all born yesterday.
I would never scapegoat anyone, but it is very...
There's no Q&A here. Let's go.
So she is at an event. Someone asks her about the firing. She says it wouldn't scapegoat anybody. Then her handler brushes off whoever asked that question, says, there's no Q&A here. And Karen Bass kind of oddly nods, oh, okay, we're not doing questions right now.
Yeah, she's not answering any more questions from the press. And I noticed on social media that different political strategists who have worked for her or worked with her over the years are defending her and attacking anyone who is pointing this out, saying, well, politicians never take questions, especially when they're in the middle of a big story. Everyone knows that. Stop pointing that out. Stop making a big deal out of this. Move on.
I would never scapegoat anyone, but it is very...
There's no Q&A here. Let's go. We said no Q&A. No Q&A.
She was absolutely not.
And then Karen Bass answered the question anyway, even after the handler rudely told all the reporters there's no Q&A here.
I love the fact that whenever Donald Trump criticizes the press, he is lambasted for doing that. He's a king. He doesn't want to be questioned. He doesn't want to take any questions. Yet it seems like he's talking to the press every single day. He invites them into his office where they're standing there at his desk just firing off questions at him, and he answers them. And he's answering these questions at great length on a regular basis. Yet if you're Karen Bass and there are legitimate questions about the response to this fire that you still haven't answered, or your answers make no sense, and you don't allow the press to ask you basic questions about a story that impacts everyone in the city, where's the criticism for this behavior?
She was absolutely not scapegoated. I would never do that. But it is important for us to understand what happened.
It is important for me to scapegoat so nobody blames me for my incompetence and my focusing on one issue that I wasn't even good at solving when being the mayor of Los Angeles.
And that's the truth. No questions, please.
Crowley maintains she has served with pride. I'm extremely proud of the work, sacrifice, and dedication of our LAFD members, both sworn and civilian. Now, Crowley will continue to work at LAFD just in a lower rank. Ronnie,
that's going to be so uncomfortable.
Well, it also goes to show you that she genuinely believes she did nothing wrong and that it's the mayor that's totally out of line. Otherwise, you'd just leave town. If you did something wrong that caused all of those homes to burn down and all those people to die, you wouldn't want to hang out in Los Angeles. You'd want to move on to the next gig. But she says she's not going anywhere, which leads you to believe that she thinks she's going to come out of this the winner in the long run.
Now, Crowley will continue to work at LAFD just in a lower rank. Ronnie Villanueva will now serve as interim chief. Reporting live from Brentwood, I'm Chelsea Edwards, Fox 11 News. Susan?
Chelsea, thank you for that.
So there you have it. That is the fire chief's response to being fired by LA Mayor Karen Bass. Coming up later on in the hour, we'll tell you just exactly what other politicians are saying about Mayor Karen Bass, because the fire chief isn't the only one who's losing patience with the embattled mayor. But right now it's time for KABC Dependable Traffic. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to go back and listen to an episode from last week that you may have missed, that's easy to do.
Like maybe you want to hear even more sound of Karen Bass sounding like a buffoon.
No!
Go to KABC.com, click on podcast.
We're a little late.
Go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes.
At the end of the day,
You could do a Google on the YouTube or get that handy-dandy KABC app.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store or the Android Store. It's the easiest way to listen live to this radio station.
Oh, you're so optimistic.
And download all the podcasts.
Doctor.
Well, it's not just all of you out in Radio Land who are losing their patience with the mayor of Los Angeles. Randy, so are elected officials in L.A. County,
including L.A. County Supervisor Lindsay Horvath.
Quite frankly,
Lindsay Horvath, who represents the Palisades, sent some nasty texts to Karen Bass in the first couple of weeks of the fire because Karen Bass's response was uncoordinated and inept. Would you like to hear about the back and forth?
Ooh, I can't wait.
Then let's go to KCAL.
Now, since the Eaton and Palisades fires, city and county leaders have tried projecting a united front, but new text...
except for the fact that Karen Bass is usually doing a totally different presser now than what the county's doing, and Gavin Newsom doesn't want to be seen anywhere near Karen Bass and only hangs out with Barger these days.
And notice the language, projecting a united front. Not actually providing a united front, but projecting one, because with these people, that's all that matters.
But new text messages obtained by the LA Times are exposing a rift between LA Mayor Karen Bass and a county supervisor.
That paper is a little different now, isn't it?
Just a little bit.
KCAL News political reporter Tom Wade is live in the Palisades now with what the text messages actually said. Good evening, Tom.
Well, Pat, it's pretty clear that there's some tensions going on behind the scenes. When these fires broke out back on January 7th and they were raging here, Karen Bass has received a lot of criticism. And now we know that criticism was also going on behind the scenes.
Whether it's members of the city council or it's members of the board of supervisors or her own staffers, how many people privately have ripped on her for ditching town?
Oh, everyone has. I know it because many of them have done it in text messages to me.
People want clear communication.
LA County Supervisor Lindsay Horvath addressing behind-the-scenes tensions with LA Mayor Karen Bass. The LA Times obtained a series of heated text messages from Supervisor Horvath, whose district includes the Palisades.
Now, who exactly would be leaking Lindsay Horvath's private text between her and Karen Bass?
Oh, it has to be coming from Horvath because they want to portray her as the chief foil to Karen Bass. Because keep in mind, these are her constituents who are suffering. And if the public is upset with the response to it, and all the polls show that they're blaming Karen Bass, you want to be the antagonist to Karen Bass. That will benefit you politically.
That she sent to Mayor Bass. Horvath first appeared frustrated with Bass about 2 weeks after the start of the fires because Bass stopped holding joint press conferences with county leaders. Horvath texted her, "You asked us to lay off the daily pressers. We did. We asked you to join us for this announcement tomorrow. No response. Doesn't feel very locked arms to me."
Oh, now that is a stab at Karen Bass.
Because that is always what Karen Bass says when she's referring to the response to the fires.
Well, she says that to the response to everything. That was the big thing she said over and over again when she declared the state of emergency on homelessness. And then Lindsay Horvath declared the state of emergency on homelessness for the county. We are locking arms. Arms are locked. They're locked together. So the fact that Lindsay Horvath in a text message to Karen Bass says, "Doesn't sound very locked arms to me," is about as good of a dig as you can get.
I love it.
No response. Doesn't feel very locked arms to me. Locked arms, one of the mayor's.
This also shows the lack of any kind of coordination from what pressers she's doing, what pressers the county's doing, and what pressers that Gavin's doing. Like we discussed, Gavin had this presser with all these private business people to talk about the private enterprises aspect to help the county recover, and Steve Soboroff wasn't even a part of it.
They're all doing their own thing, but specifically, Karen Bass is becoming the new George Gascon, where you would see these press conferences about public safety, and they would have everyone there except for George Gascon. Now, with the fires, you're seeing the same thing, except it's Karen Bass that none of them want an association with.
Quite frankly,
I miss it. No, I don't. What am I kidding?
Locked arms, one of the mayor's signature phrases, promising she will lead government and community leaders with unity to solve problems. 10 days later, Bass would announce...
I hope during this entire expose of the failures of the Bass administration, the residents of Oakland, who will be picking a new mayor in a few weeks, notice this is what could happen when you elect a longtime member of Congress to do an actually important job.
Oh, Randy, you're so funny. You know they're going to step on that rake.
10 days later, Bass would announce the Palisades would reopen to the public, but after outcry from residents and some city leaders that a general reopening was too soon, Bass backed down. And
you mean when Bass was going to open PCH to all the looters?
By the way, I'm hearing rumors that PCH could be shut down for as long as 2 years.
Well, they're going to have to shut down parts of it for the entire time, because how exactly do you get all of the trucks in and out of these tiny little streets?
Well, what do you do if you live in Malibu? If you live in Malibu, now you have to go through Thousand Oaks to get anywhere, which is going to take you north of 2 hours. You are now completely isolated if you live there.
And as everyone that lives in Los Angeles knows, even if you don't ever take PCH, if PCH is closed, it screws up traffic on every other freeway, including my favorite 405. So I guess what Karen Bass and Lindsay Horvath are trying to tell me by keeping PCH closed is that I should stay here in Texas.
I think they're trying to push you out of state.
Bass backed down and kept the Palisades closure in place.
Bass went downstream. That's what I would have gone with that.
When Tim Salmon used to hit home runs, Rex Hudler would say, he's going upstream.
Bass backed down and kept the Palisades closure in place. Horvath texted her, I don't know what's going on over there. Coordination is missing.
Duh.
Again, this is from Lindsay Horvath's private cell phone. It's not like a staffer took screenshots. The only way the LA Times gets these texts outside of a reported hacking, which we have not heard about, is Lindsay Horvath sent them to the LA Times.
Well, keep sending them, Lindsay.
I don't know what's going on over there. Coordination is missing, but it's what people want and deserve. Would be great if your team could get on that page with us. Horvath says she and the mayor have resolved their issues.
Sure they have, because now the text messages are out there and the damage is done.
Oh, but don't worry. You'll be fighting again real soon.
She and the mayor have resolved their issues.
We have since discussed the subject of the text messages, and it's clear that we agree that the situation could have been handled better, and it needs to be handled better going forward. We're clear.
And, oh, wow, now she's going into Kamala Harris territory.
We're clear and have been clear.
Yet they're still not appearing on a stage together anytime soon.
Oh, no. No, that's what keeps them civil.
You understand, you have Gavin appearing with Barger. You've got Horvath appearing with all the leaders of county government. Karen Bass is pretty much by herself when she is a presser, or she's with Steve Soboroff, who she had to pay $500,000 to hang out with her.
Would you want to be running for re-election and having pictures taken of you with Karen Bass at the scene of the fires?
No, I wouldn't.
Better going forward. We're clear, and it's time to focus on moving forward and making sure we're helping our residents.
She is so passive-aggressive.
For Palisades residents like Robert Trinkkeller, whose home made it through the fires but was damaged, keeping government in sync during this recovery is critical.
People are scrambling for information. You know, do I do this? Do I do that? There's 1,000 moving parts, so I can understand why it's not working really smoothly at this point.
Well, it's specifically the city not talking to the county, which is emblematic of every problem that this region is facing. What made anybody think that it was going to be any different when there was a massive emergency?
Well, it's not just the city that's not talking to the county. City departments aren't talking to one another. Don't forget, DWP never told the fire department that the reservoir was empty.
Political experts say Mayor Bass is under tremendous pressure to streamline and expedite the recovery and rebuilding process as questions swirl about her initial response to the fire disaster. The text messages from Horvath appear to shed light on what's been, at times, a chaotic effort.
Mayor Bass has received one punch after another, whether it was the trip to Ghana, the controversy with the fire chief, and now this controversy here. Certainly we had heard already about the back and forth, the miscommunication with the reopening of PCH through Malibu and the police and fire department not being aware of that. That sounds like this is another part of that story. So
who's in charge here?
And when are the city officials in Malibu going to go to war with Karen Bass? Because if she keeps PCH shut down for 2 years and your people have to go through Thousand Oaks to get anywhere, to go to places like the airport, or you have a business meeting in the South Bay, downtown, whatever, you do realize that that's going to wreck their lives.
So clearly, though, locking arms and being kind of conciliatory is the nature of Karen Bass. It clearly seems like there's some failure to live up to that, her own personal standard in this instance.
This was the big test, and she failed the big test, and now she's failing every aspect after it.
And by the way, she was failing on homelessness before that, which was supposed to be her top priority. But for whatever reason, everyone was afraid to call her out on it.
Mayor Bass has been asked repeatedly about criticism that the initial response to the fire was botched. She has said that there will be several independent investigations in the months to come. Reporting live in the Palisades, I'm Tom Waite, KCAL News.
Fun little note, that report came out Thursday night, and how did Karen Bass get rid of that story? She fired the fire chief.
And let's talk about the investigations for a moment. They're all BS. She wants an investigation as to why she went to Ghana. What is there to investigate? You asked Joe Biden to get you an invitation. He did. You got a plane ticket. You knew about the winds. You knew about the fire risk. You didn't want that to interfere with your time at the party because, after all, Cinderella has to go to the ball. And now you want an investigation? Who do you hire to investigate that? You hire an attorney? A police officer? What are we looking at here? You don't necessarily need Sherlock Holmes to figure that one out. We all know the answer. Let's investigate. When she calls for investigations, she doesn't actually want a real investigation with real answers. What she wants is she wants the public to give her credit for doing, quote, something. If she's investigating, then she's doing something. But results to the investigations, she's not interested in that. Because if they actually did, and they produced results, it doesn't matter which investigation you're referring to, she's going to come out looking bad. But there you have it. That's the latest from the mayor and all of the scandals coming from the fires. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Rhea writes in with a little rhyme for us. The LA fire chief shouldn't have been hired, but from Bass on down, everyone should be fired.
No!
I don't think Mother Goose would like that one. The Fix California Hour is next, and we've got an update for you on former Oakland Mayor Sheng Tao.